Well, good morning, everybody. It's a big weekend in the Snodgrass household. My grandma is turning 93 years old. She lives over near Jacksonville, Illinois, and I know exactly what she's going to ask me when I see her later on this weekend. She's going to say, Eric, it's dry. What are we going to do about this? And I love my grandma so much, but I'm going to have to tell her, look, Grandma, we have all had a really dry August. Well, most of us have, except for some heavier rains that lately have gone through this area, and then the bigger monsoonal circulation that has started to set up, although it's still missed a big interior part of the Four Corner states so far. But I'm going to be honest with her. I say, Grandma, the biggest issue right now is this, the Bermuda High. It has finally, after months of living up against the East Coast, later today it's sitting somewhere over here. And the farther it gets away from the United States, the more toward Africa or Europe it goes, the greater the risk is going to be for drier conditions. It's also going to open up the door for more cooler weather. And in a few minutes, I want to show you where some of that cooler weather is coming from. But let's just go back to that real quick and look at these stats. Because as Matt and I have been pointing out all week, just the extent of the dryness that it goes all the way from the Northeast through the Great Lakes states. I should circle more of this than getting down into this part of the Midwest. But there's a corridor in through here: Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. That's been exceptionally dry, and of course, way up into Maine, it has been as well. So many of you likely take trips up to this part of the world to see the fall colors change, which will be happening very, very soon. And some of this dryness can often change the way that the sugars within the leaves, how quickly they get in and out of those leaves. And as a result, we can get some pretty spectacular colors out of this, although tend to be a bit more brief. So knowing all of this, what has the latest drought monitor done? Well, this is how things look now. We've gone another area deeper here in terms of degradation in the Mid-South. And also you can now see more drought areas showing up in the Northeast. And there's this flash drought scenario that's taking place here that is got a lot of folks concerned. And I understand certainly why that is. I live right inside of this. And in my household, my son is most upset. As you know, he has his own lawn mowing company. And he's kind of getting frustrated. And every time I ride with him around town, he's just talking about everybody's dead lawns and what they could be doing to handle it, and he wants to go dethatch everything for everybody. And I got hey, listen, son, we don't have time to take care of the whole world's lawns. I appreciate the enthusiasm, but this is a broader issue for all of ag in this region as well. Now, real quick, I want to show you. Let's go over to maps, and I want to do the change maps. Let's just have a look at how things have changed over the last 4 weeks. So we're looking at up to a 3-class degradation in drought. So there has been lately a very sharp cutoff in where the rainfall has come through in this part of the Mid-South, and getting over to the kind of the Arkansas River Valley, the Red River Valley, this region. And we can see here that some of those places got some beneficial rains lately. I'll show you that in a second, but others have missed. And so I just want to make sure I point this out as we go forward into this forecast. The Mississippi River right now at Memphis is only 0.87 feet above low stage, so that's that zero line here. And that means it's come down, almost 37 feet since it was flooding back in April. I think it's important to realize and understand when we think about these areas, because the extremes in terms of precipitation delivery they've been remarkable this year. So this is what the last 30 days or so has looked like. And there are numerous places that are in these deepest reds that have not measured any rainfall in the last 30 days. And it's been made more apparent when you look over the last 7 days. So while we watched a large plume of moisture getting up, farther and farther to the north in parts of Oregon, but Nevada, the eastern side of the Sierra Nevada mountains, and then certainly into Idaho, Wyoming as the monsoon finally got going, it's only been this narrow corridor here. There's been some more organized precipitation. You come off the Front Range, you come into this corridor, and that's about it. A lot of scattered storms here, scattered storms there. We're going to watch for some heavier rain coming through this area in the forecast. But I have a feeling some of these places that have zeros, like my backyard right here, are going to keep a zero around for a while. So I just wanted to pull up something because I mentioned Memphis, and you can see that Memphis is right here where the 23% is. They got a little bit of rain just on the northern edge of this. But I showed a moment ago the water levels at Memphis. And it's a reminder of how we got to be so far above average. There's already been 44, 0.26 inches on the year. Average would be something like 35 and a third. So we're well above our historical averages. But the flat lines at the end here have been what has driven this flash drought as of late. So the reason we're so high is because of what happened in April, the heavy rains that were scattered throughout May and June. But then as summer kind of plowed into this, it got quite dry. So we can watch their evaporation rate outdo the heavier rainfall. So if you want to think about it this way, they were 13 inches in surplus when you subtract evaporation from precipitation, and now they're only 5. So somewhere 8 inches of water has disappeared, and I think it has a lot to do with these consistently hot temperatures, well above their averages, with only brief interludes of cooler weather, which we are in one right now. I did, since we're focusing on this area, want to show you the latest NDVI data. And I picked out Kentucky, Tennessee. I've masked this only for a cropland, but we're also going to toss in there Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And that red line represents this year's NDVI. So after weeks and weeks of talking about very high NDVI for the Corn Belt, which is primarily to the north of this region, I do want to point out that this is a spot where we're now down there well below historical averages. And we just need to consider what is going to be coming into this area, if anything, to kind of break the rainfall up. As anticipated through early this morning, we knew that this week's rainfall was going to have a very sharp northern edge to it. And there you can see where it sits. You can also see some of the showers that came through at the end of this week around the low that was up near the Hudson Bay. And there was some needed rain that got into these regions right in through here that we've been monitoring for drought development. But the monsoon has been quite impressive in its northward extent this week. Heavy rains that have come off the front range of the Rockies here in Colorado. And there is the remnants of Juliet, which overspread a lot of cloud cover into Southern California and some rain. We picked up more showers as the frontal boundary stalls out over parts of Florida this week as well. And the big question is, where is it all going in the near term? So let's get into some satellite data. This was yesterday afternoon. And once again, just a healthy amount of storm activity happening here with the western United States monsoon. We can see the rainfall again coming off of these storms just south of the Red River here. More extensive cloud cover that extends from West Virginia into the northeast. But many places in the midsection of the country just crystal clear blue skies. Where we did not have clear skies, it would be right here back into parts of Oregon. I'm going to take a closer look at those fires in a second. But it is just a reminder of what Matt talked about yesterday. This same satellite animation, 20 years ago, had one of the worst natural disasters in U.S. history in Hurricane Katrina, just bearing down on New Orleans. I've been down, of course, to New Orleans many, many times, and I'm amazed to see just how much of the city is still seeing the impacts of that hurricane. And we attempted to go down there to help with the relief efforts soon after. I know Matt was just a young kid, but I was a professor at University of Illinois when this was happening, and I remember teaching my students about it. And I've never struck a more somber tune in my lectures on hurricanes, being reminded of the sheer power of what they can do. So I'm thankful to not see something like that. But I will be honest with you, the number of growers that I've talked to lately that know that the map looks something like this, that have asked, like, hey, is there anything coming? Can you, what would it take to get just a weak tropical system to come out of the Gulf and do something, fall into line somewhere here through the Mississippi Basin into the Ohio Basin, a weak, decaying, old system. Even folks that are rapidly going through harvest would rather see the moisture than to worry about developing more and more fall drought, given what we've seen as of late. To the northwest, before I zoom in on those fires, I want to show you there is a deeper low just spinning off the coast, and it's impressive to see this. In fact, there are 1, 2, and 3 lows that are spinning here that you can see in the cloud field. And again, this was yesterday before the sunset, but I just want to point out these aren't going to get inland because of the way the Pacific is blocked up right now. But that fire into Oregon is something that has to be looked at, because we watched yesterday this fire show up. And as Matt talked about, you can see the little white areas on top of the smoke. Those are those pyrocumulus, which Matt talked about. And my goodness, this one was putting out a lot of pyrocumulus. So we're going to continue to see fire activity like this, given the heat that's been in the northwest and also how dry it's been as of late in this region. But I do want to point out, you can see this very thick, low-level cloud that hangs out right here along the coast. This, for most of summer, is extended all the way down through coastal California, keeping that region very, very cold this summer compared to its historical averages. Okay, where are we going? Early this morning, we have frost advisories that are out for northern Wisconsin and the UP. We've got fog here, and we've got some flood watches, in this region. And it's nice to see a not so busy map overall, but there's still some impactful stuff on this. I went looking early this morning. I'm about an hour ahead of sunrise here. And you can see that we were down here 36, 37, 34, there was likely patchy frost in this region early this morning. But we've already made a pretty big jump up in the temperatures back over here toward the Red River Valley. We're now, overnight lows, we're in the mid-50s. And we're going to watch a pretty wild bit of range in temperatures coming up. But again, a lot of folks are going to focus a lot on rainfall. So let me show you what you got coming in for this weekend, this holiday weekend. Okay, this morning, we're watching rain here. We see the system leaving into parts of Quebec here, and we're going to keep an eye on this whole region for more isolated but locally heavy rainfall from storms. This is this afternoon and this evening. So more storms coming off, the western high plains front range. We can see a corridor of storms through here, and the front finally sags far enough to the south. Now, will these rains be able to squeak through some of these really dry spots? Well, watch them break up. I mean, you see the showers coming through Illinois over toward Indiana, area that would love to get more rain out of this, one more good shot, and it doesn't seem to be there. But by early Saturday morning, it's raining throughout parts of Georgia, according to the high-res NAM. There's a stormy corridor here, which, again, if there's anywhere I think that has a severe threat, this, at the end of this week, I think it's going to be in this corridor with some isolated risk of some stronger winds and hail. But then as we play through Saturday night and get into Sunday morning, we see almost a low in the model curl up over parts of South Dakota, western Iowa, eastern Nebraska, and better storms following to its south. You can continue to see more isolated showers and storms over parts of the southeast as well. So these folks are going to get that drink, that last drink to push the crop to the edge or to the end here, while other folks are really going to miss out on this. And I'm just going to come back to our main theme. It's a theme of a blocked North Pacific. And the big questions we've been trying to answer all week is, does this continue? Where we have this really well-defined high over low setup. It's called a Rex block, so the flow goes like that, diving into a trough here. So whenever we see this here, there's almost always a downstream trough in that area. Remember the Bering Sea rule we talked about earlier this week? Are we getting more troughs coming in here, which is going to promote more cooler weather to show up in the month of September? That's possible. What I will tell you is there's a high likelihood that this entire thing flips and shifts at some point in September, and it's going to drive the exact opposite of the pattern. So while we're talking all this cool weather now, maybe through mid-September, which is what our concern has been, don't be surprised if we see something entirely different for the second half of September because of it. All right, so what does it all mean? If we look at the next 10 days and assess the probability of getting over an inch, all right, there's our storms coming through here, more along the front range. We see the sagging boundary farther to the south, so that's our best chances of heavier rain there. And we have this corridor, which we've been talking about as seeing storms this weekend, possibly some heavy rains getting here as this little weak low tries to curl up in eastern Nebraska. Then you come right here, and again, my grandma and my son, we live right, one into the other on Interstate 72, and not going to be happy with this forecast, and I get it. And you look farther around, up to Ontario and Quebec, better chances of rain. So if I flip it over to the other side of the spectrum, who stays under 1/10 of an inch? Well, you start to see this area showing up. We have this part of Alberta getting into Saskatchewan that's drier, and then you see much of the west. And that blocked pattern is not letting any of these lows get inland, the big ones, to bring in rainfall, which is what we continue to monitor here as a very, very dry late summer, early fall time frame. You add it all up according to the European model, and this is what you get. Now, I do have some good news for my folks down in the Mid-South. Here we are playing through Monday. Now, that's the heavy rain this weekend. There's the sagging front. Again, we're going to watch for storms in this corridor. But early next week, this is Tuesday into Wednesday, there are a pair of fronts. And I'm looking right now at this part of Tennessee, which has been bone dry. And the models are attempting from Tennessee, northern Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, getting it all the way up north into Kentucky, bringing in some rain. Now, there is a front at the same time next Tuesday, Wednesday, sweeping through Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And as it comes through, it's going to be bringing some rain into those folks as well. See that? That's next Tuesday, Wednesday. But as we play it out even further, there is another big blast of cooler air coming through. But the farther out I go, there's a couple things I want to pay attention to. No major systems coming into the northwest. That's the blocked pattern. The troughs are delivering cold fronts, but they're full of pretty dry air overall. We're going to be able to maybe recycle a little bit moisture in the upper Midwest, but you get down here into this part and we just don't see much at all. Neither does, this region, which has been drought. The third thing I want to point out here is I don't see any tropical systems showing up in the models. Okay, there's heavy rain off the coast, but no big like barreling systems that are coming in at this point. And if you have a look at what's going on in the tropics right now, this is a lot of inactivity. And we're questioning how long this lasts, of course, because we are rapidly approaching the peak of hurricane season, which is right around September 12th to September 15th. And with no major well-defined deep areas of convection happening across the tropics, we're going to be throwing the brakes on this season pretty hard. There is one spot, the National Hurricane Center. In fact, let's update this, see if they changed it this morning. No, so 20% chance of something developing off the coast of Africa. But again, you don't see a whole lot. And the European model says, over the next 10 days, the likelihood of something developing here is very, very minimal. We just don't see much happening right now. So we ask when the tropics are going to turn it back on again. And I just want to point this out. This is a way by which we view the MJO, the way by which we determine where, especially in the tropics, our deepest convection is. And the models are just anchoring an area all the way through September of the best rising motion here. In the near term, okay, so what we're doing to finish August and start September, there's 2 time periods of suppression over the Atlantic. But why we think that starting, right around the peak of the season, September 15th beyond, we start to see the lid come off. And I think that's when the hurricane season is going to get going. And that will also be the transition time. I think we start to see the temperatures go somewhere different. So as you know, we've been kind of on this kick, this idea of cooler weather now, reinforcing shots of cooler weather coming over the next 7 days. And this is all east of the Rockies. That's what we're talking. How long does it last into September? There's evidence that it could go all the way into the second week. Okay. Now to show you the temperature discussion, I'm going to start you here. Frost risk right now is, maybe in this area this morning. Okay. And then at high elevation here. So we're not talking about that kind of cold air. But I do want to show you max temperatures today. Here we go. This is this afternoon. Just for reference, Oklahoma City 75, Grand Forks 85. So it just shows you the difference where there's cloud cover and rain versus where there isn't. Playing it into the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, this is all some rain-cooled air here. Again, very hot in the Pacific Northwest. California Central Valley is still pretty hot all the way down to Phoenix. We then get out to Monday and Tuesday. And then what I want you to see is while this heat stays on, next Wednesday, boy, we're driving in another front. And it's going to sink into the midsection of the country, dropping temperatures, high temperatures into the 60s. This entire time period, though, the Pacific Northwest and into Western Canada stays very, very hot. So I was curious where this air is coming from, and this is quite interesting. If you run a back trajectory forecast model on this and say, well, what's going on September the 4th when that cold air comes through, where did it come from? And right now, it is living over the Canadian archipelago, actually into the Arctic. So this is kind of our first real Arctic blast. I just picked Minneapolis as an example, knowing that the temperatures, next week, 63 near Minneapolis. That's pretty chilly temperatures coming through that area. So with all that being said, let's get a refresh on this. There we go. I'm going to show you precipitable water. I'm going to watch to see how dry this air gets, because ultimately we're trying to see if we can squeeze anything out of it. So we're keeping an eye right up here. And as I play this forward, okay, this is now through Monday. Look at the front. Here's the front we're going to watch next Monday, Tuesday come through this area. That's what's going to possibly be used to squeeze out some moisture. And then look at this dry air coming in behind it. That is the cold front midweek next week. And then we're looking at another surge of cooler air by the time we get out there to the 6th and 7th. Now, we could just surge back up 7th, 8th with another short blast of warmer air. But I do think that it's followed again because look, see that low? See the ridge over the top of it? We're still blocked up here, which is going to usher in another, I think, round of cooler air that's going to come into that region. Okay? To show it to you, this is the temperature pattern. That's the next 5 days. That's day 5 through 10 when that front comes through. And then you get this little warm-up that likely happens afterward. What I'll be watching all weekend is to watch the trend on this warmer pocket to see if it gets warmer or cooler. I think we still have one more penetrating shot of cooler air that comes into this area based upon some of the evidence we've got from the global weather patterns. So let's talk about those, get a bit more into September on the whole, and we'll finish with South America and wrap this video up. So bigger picture things, Matt and I have been detailing it all week. There will be an ongoing discussion for a while about La Nina. We continue to see stronger trades, a lot of cooler water upwelling here. These are all the early symptoms of a La Nina. I just want to caution you about something. There's going to be a lot of talk about it. And the talk is going to come from the fact that 4 out of the last 5 years have had La Ninas. This would be 5 out of 6 years if it does come true. None of those past falls and winters have had the same flavor. So we have to be very cautious using historical analogs, the recent ones from 2020 to now, to predict this fall. I think the bigger factor is how warm the North Pacific is. This is just a tremendous amount of heat in the North Pacific. And what I want to tell you is if we keep seeing this heat all the way through fall and early winter, it just keeps displacing the jet farther to the north. And that's a precursor to driving the flow in fall and winter out of the north and west. That is a drier look, and that is a colder look. It pushes the storm track farther to the south. And I want to know what that's going to do for this winter. And I got to be paying attention to the Atlantic as well. Because even though the signals for like the Arctic Oscillation, the North Atlantic Oscillation, all of these things we watch here are not strong now, how do they respond when we get into the cold season? What do they do? All of that is still ahead of us. So we have to be cautious with it. What is right now is this. We continue to watch the MJO in null space, but try to work its way back in September to phase 1 and 2. Now, thinking this through, if we left it, over in phase 5 and 6, this would be the signal, in September to have more ridging in the central U.S. and hotter temperatures. But as it stands, if it's up here, phase 2, we flip the whole pattern. It tends to be more troughs. And that's why we're kind of all thinking, hey, are we blocking things up more consistently on the West Coast to drive more cooler air into this region in September? And some of the longer term regressional constructed analogs are suggesting that's the case. If you look out there to that's all the way at the 10-4. Let's go back. Hang on. Let's go back to where I want you to see. There we go. This is like the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. There you go. Of September. See it? Trough, Bering Sea. Trough, eastern half of U.S. Ridge west. And if that is the case, I think you're going to see what we have been experiencing for the last couple of weeks just on repeat. I think that's where we're going to go with this pattern. So to finish this up, again, very skeptical of all the models. This is the new GFS extended. It goes all the way out through the month of September. What does it have? Drier than average here, wetter southeast, still some monsoonal signal here. I cannot get this out of my head that we need to be watching the Bay of Campeche, this part of the Gulf, for tropical development. And we know that we're expecting just deep convection to form off of the coast of Florida as well. The European model for precipitation during that time frame, here's the same time frame. It's also drier in these areas that have been developing drought. I mean, this is the pocket right there that we talked about earlier that has been so dry, and the models continue to make it dry. I should have included more of Maine in that. So, yeah, we'll monitor it. That's the only thing I can tell you right now is that I've been dissatisfied with the model performance, but there is some consistency right now as we look out there. And given the pattern I just explained, I could make a case for this. But you can tell by my tone, I've not even convinced myself. We've got some work to do over this holiday weekend to just monitor this to see if it gives us any sort of a signal. Now, speaking of signals, let's go down to South America. This is the latest satellite-based root zone soil moisture map. And I want to remind you that it almost always looks like this in late August. We're at the end of the dry season, and we're waiting on rains to return. The circulation is not well established right now to deliver monsoonal rains. What we would want to see if they were going to come in early are just very large areas of high pressure here, and the flow coming over the top, tapping into high humidity air in this region. We don't even have high humidity air in this region right now. So the monsoon is not well established. What we do have is a very strong cold front coming through this area, which is bringing in some pretty heavy rainfall. You can see it if I play out the GFS. This is the forecast over the next 10 days, looking at total precipitation. This goes out 15 days. And where that frontal boundary sits, very, very wet conditions in Argentina, Uruguay, and down here into Rio Grande do Sul. But the folks that are trying to plant a crop right now, would be Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás, Paraná, and there's just not enough rainfall coming out of some of the models at this point. The GFS compared to the European, which is here, very similar. See where the heavy rain is and see where it's not. So this is what's going on. The monsoon is yet to get going. That is why you see all the white in this area, which is drier. But the fronts to the south are ripping off some very, very heavy rainfall into those areas that needs to be monitored carefully for some late winter, early spring flooding. So that brings me to the last maps. We're, at the end of this weekend, Paraná, which is here, can start planting. Mato Grosso and Mato Grosso do Sul can plant on the 7th. The rest of the country can plant on the 14th. Okay. Is there going to be adequate rainfall? If you're looking at the GFS extended, which is the model that I'm preferring for this forecast, I think it's probably closer to right. What does the month of September overall hold? I think we see drier conditions in some of those key growing areas. Now, knowing that over the next few days, this is going to go very, very wet. The longer term is drier. European model, this is its forecast for the month of September. And maybe it's doing a better job picking up on this, but I don't buy this. I just don't see that being fully there until that monsoonal circulation gets going. So I'm going to leave you there and wish you all a safe and a great holiday weekend. And we will just chat next week. Appreciate it. Thanks.